and training people, that gave me a certain warmth in my tummy. So, whereas traffic jams and traffic queues can be irritating for people, I don't mind them. The rewarding nature of the fact that you are privileged to be adding value to lives of children, living the little things, sweating the little things, celebrating the little things.
Yeah,
those are the things that really make a difference. Thankfully, teaching attracts a certain type of a person as well that is happy to give. Every child deserves a champion. To be able to add value to what they do and enable them to add value to themselves and to other people is such a rewarding profession, because to me that's what leads to confident individuals. If we respect their own identity, make excellence central to everything that you do.
Welcome to the Murabiyoon Show, raising awareness of Islamic schools. School day is a long day, right?
Yep.
Early start, late finish. Which part of the day do you look forward to most, the morning or the end of the day?
I think all aspects of the school day have their enjoyment and challenges. So, in the morning when I am in school, seeing the children arrive, saying hello, salam to people, meeting, greeting, all that sort of stuff. And similarly at the end of the day as well, the meeting, greeting. So I suppose the parts of the day where there's more people interaction are the bits that I enjoy the most. And then I do like the travel to and from school as well, because it gives you time to think, especially when you're stuck in traffic. And as a school leader, you need time to think. And the day can be so busy that sometimes you can't even stop to think. So the fact that you're forced to stop in standstill traffic is actually something that I don't mind.
Okay, gives you time to reflect, catch up, prepare yourself before you get into the house.
Yeah, and just to on the way into school to kind of think about, well, just to be kind of a bit of time with your own thoughts. And similarly, at the end of the day, it's a good thing to kind of sort of wind down and abandon anything that's hanging around in your head.
Sure.
So whereas traffic jams and traffic queues can be irritating for people, I don't mind them.
It's really interesting because I've come to realise the value of actually being stuck in a car on long journeys. And if anybody knows me, they'll know that I do often do some regular long journeys.
Yep.
And it's about making the most of it. And so coming to you today, this morning, actually, I took the opportunity to prepare, to reflect, to think through.
Yep.
So there's definitely value in these kind of moments. Mm-hmm. It's about identifying, how to best utilise it, right? Mm-hmm. So alhamdulillah, that's good.
Yeah, it's making best use of what you have at all times.
Yeah, definitely. So, mashallah, I know today's session isn't being recorded, but, for those listening in, alhamdulillah, it's a beautiful masala tea. So what does Haroon, what's your go-to meal when you've had a tough day at work? What's the thing that you look forward to most coming home to?
So I'm a total foodie, so all aspects of food are welcome. And I love my other half's cooking, mashallah. She's a fantastic cook. I act as a sous chef, doing all the chopping and preparing usually, quite simply because she just is a better cook than I am. But my actual go-to meals, a bit of a joke within the family, but I actually like chips, mushy peas and pie. So stodgy warm food. That I don't mind greasy chips either. The chip shop type chips. So they can't be sort of fries and they need to have the full chip shop experience. That would be my go-to. And the other thing which is really funny, but if I'm ever abroad, the one thing I miss are Greg's cheese and onion pasties.
Greg's cheese and onion pasties. That's what I know for next time to get you then.
Yeah. So they just sort my street as, again, a piece of greasy, stodgy food that has a bit of a kind of, gives me a warm feeling in my tummy.
There was a program that used to come on TV. I don't know if it still comes on, but I don't even want to tell you what the name of the program was. But anyways, guy used to go abroad and he used to struggle with food. Right. So he used to always take a packet of Monster Munch with him.
Oh, okay.
Packets of Monster Munch because he knew he was going to hate the food. Are you a bit like that? Do you end up taking...
If when we go abroad, the key thing we take with us are tea bags, because what internationally people's understanding or perspective of tea is very different to a British cuppa. So we will take our Marks and Spencer's tea bags or Twinings with us, because having in my early days of travel gone abroad and asked for a cup of tea, and what you get is very different often to what we anticipate in this country. So so the kind of key things there would be tea bags, I think, definitely.
Mashallah. And just to end this segment, you do anything interesting over the holidays?
So this particular holidays, we actually went over to Antalya.
Oh, mashallah.
And we spent it was a bit of a last minute thing actually, and I think I just needed to get away from the cold. I don't like the cold. Snow is beautiful to look at, but I really don't like the cold at all, in any way, shape or form. And so I felt it was important to get away. So we managed to find a lovely place to go to in Antalya. We've been several times before, and it was a total lazy break away from home. And alhamdulillah, before we went, we checked the weather, and whereas it was 1 degree here or -1 or something like that, it was 20 degrees there.
Oh,
so
beautiful.
the complete contrast of temperatures for this time of the year was absolutely welcome and beautiful.
I was going to say, you live in a part of the world where it's traditionally quite cold and raining, right? And quite windy. So I was going to say, how do you deal with the rest of the year? And is it just a
miserably? Yeah, extra layers, and just kind of remembering that obviously with bad there's always good. So even though it rains, obviously rain is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we wouldn't survive without water. Albeit excuse me, sometimes feel like being followed by rain clouds in this kind of area. But I think it's always knowing that there's light at the end of the tunnel. So at the end of the cold period comes spring, and with that becomes greenery, new life, flowering buds, so always something to look forward to.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, mashallah, you've been in education now for the best part of what, close to 25 plus years?
In education itself, since 2003, so 20 years in education.
Sure.
But longer than that in leadership.
Wow, mashallah. What were you doing before you got into education, out of curiosity?
So I worked in operations management.
Okay.
For sort of large blue chip kind of companies. My role was sort of senior operations management, so managing people's processes, systems. It was a retail environment, and as much as it had a certain buzz about it, it wasn't the most fulfilling or rewarding profession.
Okay.
So for that reason, I started looking around to do other things, and I tried a teacher taster course.
Wow, all those years ago, and here you are to tell the tale.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. It's interesting how certain moments or certain events that you go to just have a profound effect on your life and just impact you.
Yeah, I think the thing that I found was that even though I did the job that I did, working with people on a day-to-day basis and adding value to ultimately a company's profit line, it didn't seem like it was adding value particularly to people's lives. But what I did notice at that stage of my career and my life was that when I got involved in things like training people, that gave me a certain warmth in my tummy and made me feel like I was doing something purposeful. And so to me, the sort of next thing was to consider what that might look like in another kind of context or environment, which was teaching. So I qualified as a professional trainer at that stage, but I wanted to do more, and so went to the teacher taster course. Initially didn't like what I saw actually, because I did it in secondary and I wasn't overly keen at what I saw at that time, but maybe that was down to the experience I had in a particular school. And then my other half suggested that I try primary. Okay. And I went to primary, tried it, absolutely loved it, because it enabled me to, I suppose, unleash certain elements of creativity that I had inside me. And the rest, as I say, is history. Funnily enough, then I went full circle when I actually trained to become a head. I did my training in both primary and secondary.
Oh, okay.
And that was really useful to be able to understand the two different contexts, particularly as one feeds into the other anyway.
Sure. How long have you now been kind of a leadership, kind of head teacher type of roles?
So my background actually, like I said, is leadership, even from before coming into education. So I think from the age of 21, I formally kind of went into leadership, having held a team leader type role, went into management aspects of leadership, and then progressed in seniority there. But then when I had my career change in 2003 and went into teaching, at that point then I wanted to get a real good feel of what it was like being in the classroom. So obviously focused on being a class teacher for maybe a couple of years, but then because I did come with at that point a hefty sort of background of leadership experience, the school that I worked in recognised that, and so I started then as my first middle leader role, which was looking after whole school curriculum design, curriculum innovation, and that was probably 2007, maybe around 2007, 2008. And then from there onwards, I've held a succession of different leadership roles, starting with, obviously, like I said, middle leadership roles, and then moving into senior leadership roles, then working as a deputy principal for a number of years, then working as part of that, progressing into an acting headship role, then as a principal of a two-form primary school, and now as an exec principal that's tasked with sort of growth and strategy and school improvement.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah, alhamdulillah. I can see the journey that you've been on, and actually it's interesting because often leaders of Muslim schools, they're always craving not for more in terms of title or status as such, but actually to have a greater impact and effect. And there's this burning desire to work towards something. And we'll come on to that, what that is for yourself. Yep. But I mean, being a head teacher, a leader of a Muslim school, or being a leader of a school full stop sounds very glamorous. It seems like, mashallah, you've hit the peak of your powers. But there must be some challenges along the way. Is there a particular challenge that comes to mind for you, like something that sticks out during your time in headship and leadership, a particular situation that you thought, you know what, that was really tricky and this is how I dealt with it?
I think for me, one of the key aspects of leadership is collaboration and collaborating with other people, other organisations. But equally, as part of that collaboration, there also comes a high level of accountability as well. And it is a high stakes profession. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Should it be? Should it not be? That's a whole different conversation maybe. But I think certainly the amount of accountability that the role comes with is quite immense. And I understand the reason why, we're trusted or entrusted with, managing children's lives on a day-to-day basis. And obviously with that should be accountability. But I think sometimes those elements of it, the accountability elements of it, can seem maybe a bit sort of too high stakes, I think. And I think it's just understanding that actually comes with part of the territory. And in the same way, when you asked me about the weather, I said, well, at the end of the cold period, you get spring and you get flourishing buds and greenery and flowers and new life. Remembering that that's one aspect of the role, and actually, the rewarding nature of the fact that you are privileged to be adding value to lives of children, and of course, the teams that you're responsible for, that outweighs the accountability and the challenge that comes with it. But yeah.
Alhamdulillah. What's been your biggest highlight and achievement in headship? What's a specific moment that comes to mind?
Gosh, it's such a privileged profession, so I don't know if I can even think of. I can think of something that really kind of resonates with me in terms of feeling like making a difference, and that actually is back to my role as a classroom teacher, having acquired a class of children of which there was a child who really struggled to read, and the school that I worked in at the time wasn't particularly well resourced in terms of SEN provision or assessing children's needs to the level maybe. So I had to sort of go away and do a little bit of research really as to what could be a barrier that was preventing this child from reading. And I managed to tap into an voluntary organisation that came and did some assessments and helped me understand things a little bit better. But something as simple as giving that child a blue plastic overlay that she put over her book, and the kind of her sort of being ecstatic at the fact that the words were no longer jumping around on the page, and very clearly that child had sort of perhaps dyslexic tendencies that hadn't been diagnosed or recognised, and the joy at which and I think that's the thing that with teaching, that it is such a rewarding profession. You're adding value to children's lives on a day-to-day basis, and the difference that you are making, so perhaps something that may seem as simple as that, but obviously I'm telling you this tale 20 years on, and it's obviously stuck with me to this day.
Yeah, sure. No, mashallah, that's beautiful. It's the little things often.
Yeah, absolutely. I think living the little things, sweating the little things, celebrating the little things.
Yeah,
those are the things that really make a difference.
What's been a particular low point? Something that maybe you've had to carry with you at the end of the day, coming home on that long drive home, or just something that's just hasn't sat with you.
I think depending on the culture of the school, sometimes the workload elements have been phenomenal, and that's why when I came into leadership, particularly within a senior leadership aspect, I considered it my responsibility to be able to break down some of those workload elements for the colleagues that we work with, and particularly our teaching staff. There's nothing like being a teacher, from the good of it and the bad of it as well, in terms of the rewarding nature of it, but also the demands that it has on you. And it comes with the territory, and I think people need to understand that there is an expectation that you will and do have to give beyond the school finish times in order to do your job well. Thankfully, teaching attracts a certain type of a person as well that is happy to give. But I think the workload elements in my early days of being a teacher, and that's why when I went into leadership in education, I wouldn't say I made it my mission or crusade, but certainly questioning why people are doing certain things when they don't need to, in order to simplify things for themselves, and trying to eliminate workload wherever possible. I've always seen that as part of my responsibility. Now, if despite that people choose to do additional and extra, then that's fine. I have no problem with that. But, simple things like signposting people to ready-made resources, which are often written by curriculum experts, and then adapting them to the needs of their children. In contrast to that, having worked in a school where there weren't any curriculum materials for anything. And that's not sustainable for anybody, really, no matter how good a practitioner you are. If you don't have a starting point and you're always having to reinvent the wheel, then that to me is a leadership failure. I think as leadership, we're responsible for trying to make what is a difficult, challenging profession as enjoyable and as less workload driven as we can.
Sure. No, Jazakallah khair for sharing that with us. Often, there's somebody, a moment that usually has helped encourage people to pursue their dreams and their ambitions. You know, for yourself, is there anybody, an individual like that who's kind of really inspired or motivated you and continues to do so really through the journey that you've been on?
I think obviously as a practicing Muslim, you know, we try to emulate the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and you know, we look at how he took life's challenges and, you know, left us with a positive legacy through Islam and through the Sunnah. So obviously I would always, you know, as a practicing Muslim who wasn't always a practicing Muslim, would signpost the Prophet ﷺ as the number one person, and then obviously, you know, the Sahaba and the other prophets and messengers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to us. I think within the field of education, you know, there's an abundance of people, and there's a video by a lady called Rita Pearson that circulates on TED Talks, and you know, she's a lady who's no longer with us now, but the video that's on TED Talks is one of those videos you can listen to it time and again, because it's timeless in the message that she gives. And the message that she gives is about the importance of human connection. And I think that obviously on a day-to-day basis as a school leader, we're trying to deliver a certain educational outcome, but that educational outcome or outcomes are not just ground in the academics of reading, writing, maths, the 3 R's as we call them, reading, writing and arithmetic, I should say. But it's that we are tasked with something bigger and larger than that. And I think if we recognise the importance of human connections and relationships, then I think it makes it all the more beautiful. And so the sort of the example that Rita Pearson talks about in her video, and I think the title of the video is something like "Every Child Deserves a Champion."
Sure.
But it's a really beautiful video, and I've seen it so many times, but it always has the same impact. Yeah, it's something I would recommend for anybody who needs refreshing and reminding as to the purpose of why the school workforce does what it does. It's a really beautiful video and really inspiring to listen to and watch.
No, it's a fantastic video, and we'll add it to the description as well. So on that point, I mean, why do you do what you do? What's your driving force? You know, what is it that gets you out of bed and wants to give the level of sacrifice and commitment that you give?
So I think, you know, like I talked about earlier, obviously I was privileged to be in a position of leadership prior to coming into working in sort of the field of education. But what I could see was that field of educational leadership would give me an even wider scope or opportunity to make a difference to people's lives. And obviously the chalk face, as we kind of say in olden terms, are the children, making a difference to the lives of children. And having as a childhood having through my childhood experienced some very strong teachers and the difference that they made to my life at sometimes quite difficult periods of my childhood, I think that always resonated with me as something that maybe I would do in the future. I didn't quite see that through teaching. I did sort of voluntary youth work and that sort of thing to try and make a difference. But I think, like I said, just the whole privilege of being able to make a difference to children's lives, to people's lives, and that includes the wider workforce as well and the colleagues that we work with in schools, to be able to add value to what they do and enable them to add value to themselves and to other people is such a rewarding profession.
Yeah, definitely. So just one final question on this part. And I know we touched on something earlier on that you were doing before, alhamdulillah, you started practicing, you mentioned. But if you weren't a head teacher, what else could you see yourself doing? What would be that? What would be the ideal job?
Oh gosh, I wouldn't say that I'm a restless soul, but there are many things that I enjoy doing, and sort of certain creative elements of life are enjoyable to me, and in many different ways. Something in the future that I would like to be able to do would be to write books, particularly for children. So maybe if I wasn't working in the field of education the way I am, perhaps being a writer, particularly writing for children. I grew up with the privilege of having a library on the doorstep where my house was, and so in between going to school and going to masjid, there was always a bit of an opportunity to go to the library and immerse myself in fiction and reading endless books. So that love of literature always came sort of from a young age, very naturally as well, and knowing the sort of the spark that literature can have to a person's imagination and creativity, and just the ability to be absorbed, in a really good text, is something that stuck with me to this day. I don't read as often as I would like to be able to, but certainly in the future, if there was something, then maybe a writer.
Alhamdulillah. Watch this space.
Who knows?
Inshallah, you never know. All right. I mean, let's go on to get to know your school a little bit. Okay,
Yeah.
So if I was to ask you, Haroon, give me an elevator pitch. Okay, we're on an elevator. We're about to go up to the 10th floor. In the space of 30 seconds a minute, tell me your school and what your school's about and what it stands for.
So I think, like any successful organisation, I think being conscious of the mission and the vision are really, really important. So the school, we're a single academy trust at the moment, and that means basically we have one school within our trust, and inshallah we have aspirations for growth. In terms of an elevator pitch, the key sort of thing for me to say is that we have a very clear motto. The motto is believe you can. And I think that speaks for itself. That's what we look to develop within our entire school community. So it's not just for children, it's for adults and children alike. And underpinning that motto is our vision, which is that our school is one where a respect for excellence in learning pervades all aspects of school life. So we believe that at every stage of a child's journey, and an adult's journey, I should say, within our school, that excellence should be at the foremost of everything that we do. And that can be, like I said earlier, the smaller things, which are just as important. So an interaction on a corridor should have excellence. So to see another member of staff or to see a child on the corridor, a simple but beautiful exchange of Assalamu alaikum, how are you, or good afternoon, how are you, and to attentively listen rather than just kind of being like bystanders passing one another in a corridor, through to all aspects of sort of managing the school, the day-to-day teaching that goes on, obviously, all aspects of school life. Excellence is at the forefront of what we do, and that's underpinned by a key set of values which we aspire towards, that are simple human values about life, that we sort of amplify to develop the broader aspects of being a child or being a whole person. And then from an ethos point of view, we have two main aspects. One is our faith ethos as a Muslim school, and the other aspect is that we use a high level of educational technology to amplify children's learning.
Sure. And I'm keen one day, inshallah, to understand the technology that you use. a little bit better, because mashallah, it's quite a unique trait. And I know, mashallah, tabarakallah, you guys are certified by Apple in what you do in your training center as well. So, mashallah, there's I love the idea that a Muslim school is in partnership with an organization like Apple and leading the way for other non-faith schools to benefit and be supported, which is fantastic. So inshallah that continues. Haroon, tell me a little bit about the people behind the school, because mashallah, under your leadership, under your stewardship, there's a whole team and an army of people. Tell me a little bit about the culture of the school and the people in the school.
So the school was established by, I believe, a local community organisation, and there was a recognition within the community of Bolton, that particular area, that they wanted something that catered for the needs of Muslim children. Bearing in mind that we're talking about a community where there are lots of Muslim families that live there, and a need to develop confident British Muslims. So the school was established in 2013 by members of the local community, and then that is headed up by a trust board that is beautifully diverse. So that includes people of Muslim and non-Muslim backgrounds, and collectively our board bring a whole aspect of support and challenge to the picture to ensure that we are delivering the best we can for our children in sight of our mission, to ensure a respect for excellence in everything that we do. Then obviously there's the senior leadership team that lead on that, which is made up of myself as exec principal. We have an acting head of school, assistant principals, a senior business manager, etc. Again, all working together to deliver our vision of excellence. They are supported in turn by a team of specialist middle leaders, and by specialist, they all have a certain specialism. So whether that's an academic specialism of English or maths, or whether that's a specialism of spirituality or character development, and then that obviously extends to our teaching teams and our support teams and our premises management team, and there are many kind of pieces to our jigsaw at the Olive Tree that collectively ensures that the organisation delivers excellence on a day-to-day basis.
Alhamdulillah. And I'm guessing that people are happy to be there, and there must be a good vibe and energy in the place. And
well, yeah, I mean, I'd probably sound really biased to say yes to that, but the best measure for us is the demeanour of the children, the staff, and how external visitors experience that and are left with a feeling for what our school is like. And it's not uncommon for visitors to come and to leave and to thank us for the great welcome and the happy atmosphere that they were provided whilst at the Olive Tree. And again, that comes back to our values. We wouldn't be living out our values as an organisation on a day-to-day basis if people were to think otherwise.
Sure. So on that point, if we were to able to ask a young person in your school, how do they feel being at the Olive School, what kind of response would I get?
It's not uncommon for our children to talk about how happy they are with their learning, how they feel safe, how they feel cared for. And the thing I talked about earlier about human connections, that comes through when you speak to our children. We have, every couple of weeks, we have our junior leadership team, which is made up by pupil representatives that are elected by pupils themselves to come and join our leadership meetings to tell us what's working well and the even better ifs. And when we have external visitors, they act as representatives or ambassadors for our school, and that includes elements that are sort of quality assurance measures like Ofsted, like the annual external safeguarding audit that we get done, and the visitors will always comment on how these children feel safe, cared for, enthusiastic about their learning and the sense of belonging that those children have, which obviously shows that fundamentally we are fulfilling our mission to ensure that they believe they can by believing that they are, learning in a safe, caring and supportive environment.
Alhamdulillah, mashallah. It sounds like a great place to be if you're a young person. You mentioned earlier on that the school was founded by from within the community in essence. So it's obviously got its root deeply entrenched within the community. Mm-hmm. I mean, what is the vibe in the community with regards to your school? How involved are the community? How supportive are they? If I went to the local masjid or I went to the local shop, what would they say? What kind of things would people say about your school?
I think, when people are not happy with something, they vote with their feet and they go elsewhere. And our sort of levels of attrition and volatility in terms of pupil numbers and families coming and going is very, very low. So I think just the fact that, alhamdulillah, mashallah, Allahumma barik, we don't have any concerns around those aspects or the aspects of pupil numbers and the popularity of the school. It's a really popular school. And we don't have a very high proportion of, but we do have children who are also from non-Muslim backgrounds too. And the fact that families choose to send, a family of non-Muslim background would choose to send their children to a school that has an Islamic faith ethos or designation, again, says something to me. It talks to me about the level of community that we've developed. And like all, successful organisations, we're very reflective and, there's more that we want to do and need to do to heighten the level of community involvement that we do. And I think COVID made some of that quite difficult, really. But we don't sit on our laurels and we're constantly looking at ways to try and ensure that we are increasing our sort of connection with the local community, with parents, etc. Because again, they are fundamentally our key stakeholders for our school.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If your school wasn't around and it didn't exist, what would it mean? What would it mean to the people in the locality?
Well, like I said, we've got two elements to our ethos as a school, two key elements, I should say. One is the faith designation and one is the use of technology to amplify learning. So as much as COVID has enabled more schools to be more conscious of the learning environments they're providing from an educational technology point of view, for us, the technology is only as good as its use or, how well it's used. So the pedagogical, the learning aspects that we implement to ensure the technology delivers on what fundamentally is our blueprint for learning, straight away, that is something that's quite unique to our school environment. We have a very clear blueprint for learning that's supported by educational technology, amongst other things. Similarly, the faith ethos side of things, we're not an Islamic curriculum school, we're an Islamic faith ethos school. So we enable our pupils to develop as confident British Muslims, recognising that they do have a distinct identity as Muslim children. There are certain key behaviours or aspirations that their parents have for them, and as a school we unite with parents to try and deliver that, whether that's something just as simple as giving salam or the basics of saying alhamdulillah and masha'Allah, to the whole aspect of linking our learning back to the religion of Islam. So if, for example, we teach the children about what Christmas means for people of a Christian faith, we at the same time teach the children what the life of Isa al-Islam means to Muslims, and the kind of analogy or the difference between the two. And what we're doing always is enhancing their learning, perhaps beyond what they might get in another environment. So we developing, their understanding of life in Britain, different faiths, whilst obviously supporting their development and their understanding of their own distinct faith. And that's really, really important, because to me, that's what leads to confident individuals. If we respect their own identity whilst supporting their understanding of other identities and other communities, it's really, really important to their development. So, if our school wasn't there, those are key elements that perhaps wouldn't be as prevalent within that community.
No, definitely. And I think it's really important that our young people are nurtured in a way where they understand the society that they live in, and the communities that we're within, and getting that balance right is very, very important. So, alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair for that. I want to kind of now go on to talk about Islamic schools in general. And I know, mashallah, you've got a wealth of experience, not just kind of working in and around Muslim schools, but also supporting them with training initiatives, and just generally being a leader that, mashallah, many of the communities around the UK can rely on, alhamdulillah. So let's start off with this. What does Tarbiyah mean to you? Okay, give me a definition of Tarbiyah as you see it.
Gosh, well, within the context of a school, what I would say to you about Tarbiyah is that obviously as a school we have a curriculum, and within that curriculum there is a hidden curriculum, and that hidden curriculum is Tarbiyah, which is the day-to-day nurturing of children through helping them develop their character. And so obviously through Tarbiyah, that's the way we do that. So whether that is through the day-to-day interactions, whether that be through our daily assemblies or collective worship, whether that be through the fact that we provide the children with the facility to pray and make wudu, whether that be through the fact that we link their learning to Islamic morals and manners, and or just the simple day-to-day living of our school values. All of that collectively, when you put that together, is how we develop that tarbiyah of the children. Having a very clear curriculum plan, to enable that. Developing an understanding of the wider world, so that they develop an appreciation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation in every aspect, be that nature, be that people who are less fortunate. Not a simple answer.
Not a simple answer, but to be honest with you, there's so much involved when you're nurturing somebody that it's never going to be a simple answer, right? It's going to be full of a lot of different facets and elements to it. But, I love asking leaders what their view and perspective of it is, because it kind of nicely leads on to my next question around what is an Islamic school, and it seems like a common theme is that Tarbiyah is at the heart of it. So for you, how would you define us living in the UK? What is an Islamic school? What does it mean for a child to go to an Islamic school?
Well, I think, just going back to your question about Tarbiyah per se, like I said, it's a vast undertaking, and it's one that is open-ended, and obviously as Muslims we bring back what we do to the life of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. So if you were asking me, the definition of what is an Islamic school, well, to me an Islamic school is a school that obviously raises that awareness and that understanding and that encouragement of life according to the Quran and the Sunnah. So, and bringing it back to fundamentally an awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the best way that we can. Because fundamentally at the head of our sort of religion or our 5 pillars is La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. So, that recognition of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, that we don't associate partners with him or worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Muslims. That's a fundamental belief, and that we believe that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was his final messenger, and living our life according to that. And for us as a Islamic ethos school then is threading that through our day-to-day practices and interactions at every stage as much as possible.
Sure.
Whilst fundamentally then kind of reinforcing that, or supporting that, I should say, through the delivery of the national curriculum, which obviously prepares children for wider life.
Yep.
And sort of weaving the two together to the best of our ability within a limited time frame of sort of the time the children arrive and leave.
Sure.
Does that answer your question?
It does. It does answer my question. I'm just people can't see on camera. I'm just reflecting on what you said, and I think for me it kind of always leads on to the bigger question as well, which is if we can define what an Islamic school is, or we get an understanding broadly what an Islamic school is. The question then is there a need for Islamic schools here in the UK, for Muslim schools here in the UK? Do we need them?
Well, look, faith is a personal choice, isn't it? Be that to have a faith or to not have a faith. So obviously we live in a multicultural society of which there are people of different faiths and backgrounds. And part of being British is that we learn to respect, and as the British values terminology talks about, having mutual respect and tolerance. So is there a need? Well, whilst there are Muslim communities living within the UK, then absolutely there is a need for them. And the fact that we're able to fuse together, providing for those Muslim communities or those Muslim children, whilst developing them as confident British Muslims, absolutely there is a need for it, because it's the whole aspect of leading any school. And that's no different to a Muslim school or Islamic faith ethos school, is that what you're trying to do is you're trying to recognise the distinctness of that community and bring the best out of it. So if we're talking about communities where there are, proportions of Muslims that live there, and they are choosing to adhere to a certain faith within the confines of British society, then a successful Islamic faith ethos school will always deliver that and support that, in the same way that other faith and non-faith schools do.
Yeah, and I think looking at the recent census data, with the growth of the Muslim population in the UK, and actually, I don't know about you, but I tend to feel as though there seems to be a lot more of a kind of buy-in and for the teaching of Islam amongst young people as they're developing. And traditionally, how we would have learned, reading the Quran, going to the masjid and what have you, parents seem to want children to have a bigger understanding these days, which is alhamdulillah, which is really good. But I want to ask you, obviously the vast majority of young people in the UK go to mainstream schools that don't have a faith ethos as such. Is it that, is one or the other better, or is it just Muslim schools are offering something slightly different, something slightly unique?
Well, I think it's, as I say, horses for courses. So I think if you are a family that chooses to send your child to a school of no faith, such as a community school, then that's a personal choice. That school will still, make every effort, I'm sure, to bring out the best in those children through their day-to-day delivery. For us as a school with an Islamic ethos, it's about doing all of that whilst recognising that the children do have a distinct faith. And so, arguably, if you were to look at on the surface what our motto is, believe you can, that's underpinned by, the vision that I mentioned earlier, where there's a respect for excellence in learning that pervades all aspects of life, that's supported by 6 values of trust, peace, fairness, respect, equality and compassion. You could be a school of no faith ethos and still deliver all of those aspects.
Yeah.
So in a sense, what we do is we have an additional offering whereby we not only offer all of that, but we actually offer, in addition to that, the fact that we recognise our children's backgrounds, their aspirations of their families, and we support that and deliver that in an environment that recognises that. So you talked about, for example, parents, and they obviously have aspirations for their children, and they may send their children to masjid or madrasa. We don't ever claim to replicate or to offer what the masjids or the madrasas offer, because that's the offer that the masjids or the madrasas make. That's their unique selling point.
Sure.
Our unique selling point amongst the things that I've mentioned is the fact that we will support that. So, as a modern foreign language, we offer our children the opportunity to learn Arabic. We recognise that those children, mashallah, on a day-to-day basis during the week will spend anything between sort of an hour a day to 2 hours a day over the course of a week, going to masjid or madrasa to learn about their faith, but also to learn to read Arabic, but they may not necessarily learn to understand it. Now, when you look at key research by, published by the likes of the British Council, and you look at how Arabic as a world language has benefits in terms of sort of world development, cultural development, economic development, then the fact that we actually offer that as an additional sort of opportunity that they may not necessarily get in another school, it not only supports and reinforces their parental aspirations, but what it also does is it again prepares them with a knowledge and understanding of a language that can have wider benefits to them, as developing world citizens. So I think, it's a case of that, yes, you could go and deliver excellence, and many schools without faith do that on a day-to-day basis. I have no doubts about that, how hard school leaders and their teams work to deliver excellence. Whether they deliver that the same way as we do is probably debatable, because obviously we have a unique selling point that we offer, and we deliver that through our vision and our mission as a Muslim faith school that uses a high level of educational technology to amplify learning.
Alhamdulillah. Haroon, what do you think are the biggest challenges for our Muslim schools across the UK? Generally speaking, up and down the country, the various conversations, things that you see, things that you read, experience you've had, what do you think, are the biggest common challenges, or the biggest challenge that we have?
I think if we were to go off what comes in the media, which I would always take as a pinch of salt, you've got elements of Islamophobia and misunderstanding that, could be the central focus of answer to your question. But I think more importantly, the challenges that are faced by Muslim schools are very similar to challenges that are faced by other schools. One of those being the use and deployment of resources to do or to fulfill their mission of delivering outcomes to children's lives. So I think the whole aspect of schools working together collaboratively, and within the mainstream sector we talk about system-led leadership or system leadership, whereby schools collectively work together to support one another in the delivery of excellence. I think that's the challenge that's faced by Muslim and non-Muslim schools alike. And so addressing that challenge would be how Muslim schools do work together to make the best use of their resources, to support one another, whether that be through shared procurement, shared CPD, joint moderation across schools, higher level networking opportunities that bring like-minded people together. At the end of the day, whether it's a child in a Muslim school or a non-Muslim school, or whether it's a child in Bolton or the East End of London, they're still all our children. They're our future generation. So the whole aspect of schools working together to support one another, particularly in a financial climate that we know is quite poor at the moment, I think the need for that is increasingly evident on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. And then if we kind of flip that and we said, okay, what are the opportunities for Muslim schools moving forward? I mean, what's the big hope, do you think, that we have with if we had one eye on the future and kind of where the services and the opportunities that our schools have?
Well, I mean, that need is equally an opportunity, isn't it? So there are opportunities there for Muslim schools to work together and to work with other organisations to sort of collaborate, to join forces, to pool together resources, to share their learning, and particularly from a Muslim child point of view, being very, very clear about what is distinctly different about the life of a Muslim child to perhaps, their non-Muslim counterparts. These are simple but really important lessons that Muslim schools can provide. And there used to be an old publication which was produced about the life of a Muslim child in school, and that document is transferable, or a document like that is transferable to the context of a Muslim or non-Muslim school, because it's just about what is life like for a Muslim child, what's their day-to-day practices, their sensitivities, their needs. And I think that is something that Muslim schools again can collectively enable a greater understanding of, so that if you are a teacher in a non-Muslim school, you are still then culturally sensitive to the child's needs by having that understanding, and there are, up and down the country, there are schools doing a fantastic job of delivering education to Muslim children, but they're not necessarily schools of a faith background. Yeah. And I think, but having an understanding of what makes those children distinctly different in the context of being a British Muslim is really, really important. I think that's something that, again, our Muslim communities, Muslim schools, they can sort of contribute towards the raising of awareness in that sense.
No, definitely, mashallah. That's a great opportunity and great bit of advice, actually, that, pooling our resources together and actually trying to kind of set some sort of expectation, some sort of standard as to what the challenges and, like you said, the opportunities are for young Muslims moving forward. And our counterparts in the mainstream sector, schools of no faith designation, they would welcome that information as well, and they welcome that level of support as well. So alhamdulillah, that's really good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, just last week, just as an example, and this is why I think it's really important for us to recognise that people are people, and they're just trying to do the best job that they can on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. And I was contacted by somebody asking if I could go to a community school that's based in a predominantly white working class part of the country, to deliver a talk on Ramadan and what it's like for Muslims. And so, really kind of outward or forward facing of that school to feel that they want to deliver that within their school, given that they haven't got much of a kind of population or proportion of Muslim children. Yeah. My response to that was, why do you need me to talk about it? I can send along a busload of children who will happily talk to you about what their lives are like as a Muslim child during the month of Ramadan, what it means for them. And the schools kind of embraced that with open arms to say, gosh, we didn't even think to ask about pupils, and that's the thing, really. I think, how we can kind of work to support one another, because like I said, whether they are children of a faith background or not, they're still all our children.
Definitely all our children. So as we come towards the end, I mean, if you were to give any advice to your peers about how we could improve our schools, what would you say? What would be the one?
Oh gosh, me giving advice, I don't know. I think be self-reflective, know your school, know your community, be clear about the purpose of why you exist as an organisation, and try to equip your staff, your teams, your colleagues with the best skills and knowledge you can to deliver that. Make excellence central to everything that you do, and work in partnership with parents and external organisations collectively to do the best that you can to deliver excellence to those children, because that's what they deserve. And then aside from that, to collaborate and to work with one another as Muslim schools and non-Muslim schools, to work collectively together to use the whole opportunity of system leadership to support the development of schools and their communities.
Alhamdulillah. Haroon, Jazakallah khair.
Wa yakum.